Money Mindset.
I think that sounds alright.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Millennial Money Mindset, where we have investor and author Neil Doig, who's sharing those guidance advice on how you can become an investor and then a better investor. Of course, in episode 1 we talked about what is investing and why you should invest. We used the analogy of a seed, whereby you plant your seed and hopefully that seed will grow and give you some fruit, i.e. some dividends. Neil, quickly, why should people be planting seeds?
So we talked about in the last episode where by planting seeds today, it will grow into an apple tree. We use it in the future, where you can eat the apple. You're going to get nutrients from that apple, and also that tree will provide shade in the summer, and also if it's raining, it can provide shelter from that rain. So it's really just having that. So essentially, what we're trying to teach in the last episode was having assets that will provide an income for you for when you stop working.
So exactly, we're talking about having those good times and those bad times, but if you have the right investments, you can weather all of those storms. But today, we're talking about how you can be a better farmer. Of course, we're not specifically talking about farming, we're talking about how you can be a better investor with these 5 tips for beginners. Of course, as usual, this is guidance, not advice. Make sure you do your own research. So with that said, we're going to move on to ask, what is your first tip, Neil?
So first tip's get started. So it's easy to sit on the sidelines, but the first tip is just to start actually taking action. So it's I'm a millennial myself, so I feel like we've lived through the financial crash, and people are scared to invest after that, and also people don't have the time to invest. But actually, just to take some kind of action to get to where you want to get to. So I was rubbish at physics at school, but there's the one thing I learned investing is Newton's law of motion. So the first one is inertia. So the hardest thing is actually getting started. But once you take actions, get that ball rolling, you get the second law of motion, which is momentum. So getting that momentum makes it much easier to continue. And then Newton's third law is every action is the equal and opposite reaction. So it's a bit like the more energy you put into, or more money you put into investment, the more likely you're going to get a return on it afterwards. So so first we'll start. So you've got to get over that initial inertia, then just build that momentum, and then every action is an equal and opposite. So that one action that you've taken will provide that fruit for the future. Exactly.
It's just like when you plant that seed, it creates lots of potential fruits from that. I always think there's a great quote from Michael Jordan where he said, "You always miss 1,000 of the shots you never take, so make sure you take your shot at investing." So what would be your tip number 2?
So do your research. So we talk about guidance versus advice. So you can go and see a financial advisor. They're going to pay you, and you'll pay 5% of your initial upfront as a fee. But then you could have guidance where it's actually just people ask me what kind of tips to buy, and I say buy books, because we're living in the information age where literally you can go onto Amazon and click the world's great. You can see what Buffett's his strategy, or Peter Lynch, or Jim Slater. You at the £10 for a book, or for an hour of your time, you can find out so much more than if you hadn't done that research.
So would you say that when it comes to research, all research is not the same? There's good research and there's bad research.
Yeah, so one of the challenges, or one of the problems I'm trying to solve, is with the internet, it's almost its worst enemy, because there's so much, we're bombarded with so much information out there. It's difficult to know what is good and what's bad, which is essentially why one of the main reasons for writing this book, because I've basically taken lots of all the best, learned from the greats from the past, put the reader in the present, and to help them guide the future. So essentially it's doing your research about what's available out there, and also doing your research on yourself. So knowing yourself can help you get to where you want to get to.
Also, would you say then, when in terms of knowing yourself, is the case of knowing what you want to achieve long term? It's not a short term game, is it?
So we always come back to what's investing versus speculation. So investing is a long term game. It's buying assets that are going to produce an income for you.
So in terms of tip 3, what would it be?
So it's credit cards.
Why are you getting credit cards? Everybody loves credit cards.
Because they're so damaging to long-term wealth. So credit cards, essentially they're like I think of them like they're like sugar for your teeth. Like they're addictive, and credit can be so easy, but they're so damaging to your long-term wealth.
But there might be some people who are thinking, well, Neil, how am I going to start investing? I need the initial credit. Like, how do I get it?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Like, that's the thing. I understand it's hard, but it's which is why I've given the 5 easy kind of method to do it. But it's just getting started, paying yourself first, and not using credit cards. So my whole system that I've created it doesn't use credit cards at all, not even a mortgage. But it's good. There's good debt and bad debt. So good debt can be, so if you're a doctor, for instance, or your credit using debt to pay student debt, for instance. If you want to be a doctor, essentially if it's good debt is something that's going to go up in value, whereas bad debt is if it's going to go down.
So what's an example of bad debt?
So bad debt is buying a TV on credit cards. It's going to essentially go down as soon as you purchase that TV. It's going to go down in value. That's not a good investment. That's not an investment. Whereas if you're buying a family house with a mortgage, that's going to, over 20 years' time, that's going to go up in value. Looking at kind of the long-term history. So really, difference between good debt and bad debt. But credit cards are so dangerous because compound interest works against you, so you can quite easily.
So if you can explain compound interest again, just quickly for our view, for those that don't understand.
So compound interest, Albert Einstein said it's the 8th wonder of the world. Essentially, it's making money. It's the interest on the interest. So if you've got, if you're getting a return on your investment, it's basically the money working for that money. So it's really. One of the best ways for long-term investments to use compound interest for you, rather than essentially using credit cards use compound interest against you. So you're going against the forces of nature, essentially. So
in terms of layman's terms, would you say that when credit cards use compound interest against you, it's kind of like you having compound debt, basically, where
exactly.
you get this worse and worse?
Yeah, and there's fees as well. So it's also having that money mindset. So if you've got mind space about paying. You've got credit card bills coming through, you're like, I have to pay this credit card, rather than, it's that stress that you don't need every day. And it's just, it's kind of increasing, the stress to people's lives. Like, essentially, I want to make investing in people's money mindsets, or helping people as easy as possible. Having credit cards essentially works against you. So
just to briefly sum that up, it's a case of you've got your personal wealth and you've got your mental wealth, and it seems like credit cards can impact both of them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, money worries tops the pole of kind of the stresses to millennials, and it's having credit cards and having these things that working against you. It really impacts mental health and mental mindset as well. So we told you what not to do. So tip 4 is drip feed your money into the market. So there's a tendency to put all your money into the market at once, where what you can do is just drip feed it every month into the market. So by paying yourself first, then you can pay drip feeding it into it. So when the market's high, you're essentially buying less units of these shares or assets. When the market's low, because the market's low, you can essentially buy more of these units of assets. So if you just explain what you mean by drip feed, practical sense. What they call is pound cost averaging. So by every month, you put money, automate it into the market, so you don't even have to think about it, you don't have to worry about it. But as soon as you get paid, set up a automation system where it puts in month after month. So in good times, you're paying yourself into to buy assets, and also even in bad times when markets are low, you're still paying yourself first into the market, and then it's even better. So people worry about market crashes, but actually it's like a summer sale, because markets are low. You can actually buy more units of assets when the market's low if you pay every month. So it almost becomes, the ups and downs of the market can almost become irrelevant, because you're paying in good times and bad times. You're over the long term, that pound average is going to average out better. So would you say that also ties into you thinking long term, not short term? You can kind of middle out those highs and troughs. Exactly. So investing is it's a long term strategy, whereas speculating is trying to time the market. So investing is time in the market, whereas speculation is timing the market.
So again, we're going to move on to tip 5. What would that be?
So having a diverse portfolio. So asset allocation is one of the most powerful things you can do for investing, and it's just having different asset classes. So we talked about having businesses, so shares of businesses. We talked about having property, so having assets in property, and also the pound coin in your back pocket. So that these are all different asset classes. So by having these 3 working for you, it's a bit like having at work. You might have 3. You're in a team of 3 very different people. So you might have someone who's very creative. You might have someone who's very good at accounting, or very good at maths, kind of the detail person. And you might have someone else who's very the ideas person, or who is very good at kind of organising or planning. And these 3 people working together, it's like synergy is created. So essentially the sum of the individual parts is greater than the combination of these 3 working together is greater than the individual parts. And essentially you're getting these natural synergies. And it's similar with investing. So you've got these synergies of different asset classes working together with different strengths and weaknesses, and they work at different stages of the business cycle. So different asset classes work differently in different asset classes, and also diversify not in asset classes but within asset class. By that I mean, don't just buy one share. Buy technology is amazing these days. You can do so many things that you couldn't do 10, 20 years ago, and mathematicians who are much cleverer than I am essentially worked out that it's much more beneficial to diversify, say have 50 companies in a portfolio than just one company, because it's what they call standard deviation. So you don't have that risk of having that one company.
So is it kind of situation where, let's say you've got that one company that's technology, and technology goes down, you're going to go down. But if you've got technology, you've got pharmaceuticals, you've got other stuff, then you can kind of ride it out, because whereas one goes down, another one might go up as well.
Yeah, and to use that technology example as well, so you don't want to just have Facebook, or just think of MySpace. I don't know if those people remember that, like social media platform.
Back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. So by having that, you have counterparty risk. So having that, if you invested in MySpace and then all of a sudden there's a swing in a different, the next big thing. But if you have 50 technology companies, then you're going to benefit from that kind of human ingenuity, you're basically benefiting from having those 50 different companies rather than just the one company.
There we go. So those are 5 tips on how you can be a better beginner investor. Neil, we're going to quickly run through them. So first and foremost was to start.
Yep, exactly.
Then it was to make sure you're doing your research. Then we went into credit cards. They're bad. Don't use them. And then we moved on to drip feeding, which is of course, maybe you set up an automated system where you just put in a little bit of money, whatever you can afford, and then bit by bit over a long period of time, your little bit of money turns to a lot of money. And then finally, diversify your assets or portfolio, making sure you have lots of different assets from lots of different places. So those are 5 tips. Of course, the main tip is invest what you can afford. Don't be silly. But we're also going to end with a chapter from Neil's book, and that is making sure you have a life plan and a map. Neil, explain that to our viewers.
Yeah, so begin with the end in mind. So know where you want to get to eventually. So yeah, have a life plan. Know where you want to go. So picture the 60-year-old version of yourself. Where will you be living? What will you be doing? How will you be affording? How can you afford where you're going to afford? So by thinking ahead, kind of picturing the future self, your future self, it really kind of reinforces where you want to get to. So essentially by having a plan, it gets to where you want to get to quicker. So think of it like a car journey where you're starting off and you want to get across the country. If you have an idea of where you want to end up, you're going to get there quicker than if you kind of just end up getting in a car and just start driving. And having a map as well, so you actually know how you're going to get to your end destination rather than, I'm terrible at directions, so if I didn't have a map or didn't know where I was going to end up, then you can end up going down kind of country roads miles away. But yeah, by having a plan and essentially beginning with the end in mind, it means that you'll get to where you want to get to quicker.
It's kind of like tip 2, do your research. Like all of us who can drive can jump in a car and just keep going straight, but you probably won't get where you need to go. If you do your research, you've got your plan, you may be even using Google Maps, so you've adopted someone else's plan, but you trust in their plan, it's going to enable you to get where you need to go in the most efficient manner, and hopefully you won't lose ample amounts of money on the way, or time, or things you could be better spent doing other things. We did briefly touch on the mental health aspect of credit cards.
Yeah.
And when it comes to that money mindset, why do you think that's so important, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, money worries tops a poll of millennials. So I think there's a real stress out there. People are either not making enough money or don't. I think it's basically people are it's about, we're not taught this at school, so people don't know how to invest, or financial literacy is not what it should be, and yeah, it just compounds with the mental health problems. If people are getting credit card bills through their letterbox every week, that's going to be a real stress for people, how to how they're going to pay these bills. But I mean, saving sucks. We all know that, but there's an easier way. If you automate you pay yourself first through automated systems, it just makes life so much easier. And yeah,
that's just it. It just makes life that much easier. So as we've tried to show you in this episode, do your research, make sure you've got a plan, and it's going to help your life, not just your investment life, but your actual day-to-day mental well-being as well. So once again, thank you for joining me, Neil, and thanks for having me on your podcast/program as well. You can follow us on the little things that appear on your screen, of course. Make sure you grab yourself a copy of Neil's book, and we'll be back with episode 3. Money Mindset.
I think that sounds right.